Welcome back to APolitical. I am your co-host, Alan Srochi, joined by my other co-host, Tyler Goldberg.
Great to see you again, Alan.
It's been a little bit.
We haven't been sitting next to each other for 20 hours a day for the last 2 weeks, but, whatever.
It's, folks, it's about a week away from the election as of this time of recording. And as you might imagine, we're running a little ragged right now. Would you say?
I would tend to agree.
Yeah, no, it's been a trek, but we're almost there. We're all almost there. And for today's episode, we actually, and I know the show is called APolitical, but I figure today would be a good day to get maybe a little more political, and we're not taking sides.
No.
But I think it's fun, something that'd be fun, would be to take a look back at some of the projections that you and I did earlier in the year and see how they stacked up in terms of political ad spending across the major markets in the U.S. Well, just to level set for, you all, because the folks at home. This was the Election Outlook report. We drafted that back in August of 2023. And we go through every market in the U.S. As a part of like our suite of tools here at Assembly, and we rank relative intensity by quarter for every single market. And in our Election Outlook report, we detailed the top 5 states that we assumed, based off of those projections that we did, would see the highest amount of spending. And I think that we correctly estimated a few. We overestimated and underestimated a few others. So. Tyler, I'll give the floor to you. Which one do you want to start with?
I want to start with the Southwest because I think that's an area we had Las Vegas projected as the most politically intense market in the entire country. Now, none of this is to say that Las Vegas was not a politically intense market, but I think we overestimated a couple of factors.
Okay.
A few of them being, the first was the Republican primary ended up being really
for president.
For president,
yeah,
ended up being really a dud in terms of political spending, in terms of sort of the longevity of it. Donald Trump really wrapped up the primary a lot faster than a lot of people thought he would.
Right. So we assumed that the first and second quarter of the year had seen higher relative spend than usual.
Yes, we're also not going to get into it, but Nevada did that whole thing with splitting their Republican primary into a caucus and a primary.
I actually forgot
really
about that.
Confused a lot of voters, but that's not the important part.
No.
The important part is we also were anticipating an incredibly competitive Senate race and multiple incredibly competitive House races. Those just did not materialize. The Senate race has widely been seen as the Democrat Jackie Rosen continuing with a lead. It'll probably be a close race, but it has not seen the attention that some of these other Senate races have.
Not a lot of outside issue spending in that race either.
There's been some, but just not to level.
Not to the degree that we expected.
Exactly.
No.
And the House races, this is sort of indicative of where we are in the Trump and maybe post-Trump era in terms of Democratic performance in the suburbs.
Right.
Those House races, which were incredibly competitive 8 years ago, are no longer competitive to the same extent. So I think that was something we thought would materialize, just didn't. Very similar situation played out in Arizona, where the Arizona Senate race saw less outside spending than I think we both expected it would.
Yeah, that one's a little more, I think, that one's a little more specific, less to sort of like geographical makeup, like you noted with Nevada. I mean, might be a little simplistic, but honestly, I think the honest to God's truth on this one is the candidate quality issue on the right. The Republican opponent to Ruben Gallego, who's running on the Democratic ticket, Carrie Lake, she's running on the Republican ticket. She made some waves in 22 about by burning bridges, perhaps with a lot of sort of
moderate voters,
John McCain supporters, perhaps. Like she famously threw out McCain voters from one of her gubernatorial rallies in 2022. She has not really been a coalition builder as the nominee on that ticket, and I think that we have seen that play out in terms of political advertising. Very, very minimal support from outside groups.
And she's had struggles raising money
herself
on
because
her
of
own.
Because of that. And so that one is something that's really just hard to predict from the outset because you never really know. A lot of those issues that I think beset her campaign came as the cycle began.
Yep.
And she got into a pretty testy exchange with her Republican opponent in the primary.
Yeah.
I think alienating a lot of his voters. I think a police union that was endorsing him they withheld their support of her once she got to the general. So like stuff like that is you really can't ever predict until you get into the throes of a cycle.
And it brings down the overall spend. So again, both presidential campaigns and the Senate campaign and multiple congressional campaigns are spending in a market like Phoenix, but maybe not at those extreme levels we thought. One that I think was sort of a byproduct of overestimating in Nevada and Arizona that we correctly estimated was Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
And that's because it really became the firewall state for both parties.
Yes.
I think there is a general consensus that whatever presidential candidate wins Pennsylvania will more than likely win the presidential election. Both sides know that. They've been devoting resources there across all media types.
Yeah.
You have an incredibly competitive and well-financed Senate campaign.
Which is, but make no mistake,
driving huge amounts of spending.
That race has seen more spending than Arizona has, than Nevada has. I mean, it is among the top 3 most expensive in the country right now. We'll get to the other 2 in a little bit.
And then you have, House races that are, and state legislature. Again, all of this building in, and it grows at a magnitude because as the spending, as political advertising gets more expensive, that, small buy, even if it's not going to reach everybody in a market, even if it's only, to use broadcast TV, terms, 100 ratings point buy, that's going to be a lot more expensive in October than it would have been in August. And so every campaign is having to come up with a lot of this money just to break through.
Yeah, no, Pennsylvania was definitely an area that we got correct. If anything, maybe even slightly underestimated.
Give us our old pat on the back there.
We're just trying to do our job.
We're not heroes. We're just here.
So yeah, I'd say Pennsylvania. It was up there as one of the. I think we got that one right.
Sure.
One that we, I think, underestimated a little bit, to go back to that side of the coin.
Sure. To removing Pats from our back.
Yeah, no, take that Pat off. Yep. It's the Senate race in Ohio.
Uh-huh.
That one is a race that now we knew it was going to be incredibly competitive.
Sure.
It is, at this point, the most expensive Senate race in the country. I think that both parties have determined, I think mostly the Republicans have determined, that this is the most winnable competitive seat that they have on the board that will determine control of the Senate in 2025 and beyond. This is the battleground for the Senate. Yeah. There's been wall-to-wall spending every quarter from the primary, which wasn't even, there was no real primary on the left, obviously, with the incumbent being Sherrod Brown. There was a pretty competitive primary on the right, though. Well, and there was a lot of spending early on because of that.
And I think this is their first real I was reading a great article yesterday about this class of senators, this 2006 class in Montana and in Ohio, where you saw these senators elected with the Democratic wave in 06, sort of helped over the finish line by the Obama coalition in 2012. Remember, Barack Obama won Ohio. Which
Barack Obama won Indiana
in 2008 and North Carolina.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a lot of funny happenings going on back
almost
then.
Won Missouri and Mississippi. So these senators who got elected in 06, reelected in 2012, then reelected again in 2018 with that Democratic wave, sort of the blue wave response to Trump's election, they've really benefited from the national sort of tailwinds, if you will, in those 3 election cycles. This is the first time they're up against, on the same ballot as Donald Trump in these states that have gone more and more. Montana, same thing, more and more for Trump.
And look, we saw like in 22, the Ohio Senate race that was going on during those midterms went pretty definitively to J.D. Vance.
Yes, it did.
And now
it was closer than I think many people. I think
I
Tim
think
Ryan ran a good campaign overall.
I think that overall Vance is going. We're going to see after like the results come in that not to make any predictions, but I think Vance underperformed then to what we're going to see in 2024.
Interesting.
I mean, hot takes on Apolitical today.
I don't know.
Well, we're going to find out.
I think Sherrod Brown has proved to be a very resilient senator for that state. I think he's a well-known quantity.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, we'll take a little side action on that.
We'll have to see that
one. But the point being, though, is that Republicans obviously find that this is a seat that they have the best shot at flipping.
Yeah.
And, should it go that way, that would make Ohio, that would sort of solidify the shift that we've seen in Ohio over, like as you were alluding to, since that 2006 era and beyond,
Yeah.
shifting from that swing state that we've sort of known it as for the last decade and a half or so, and kind of making it solidly red, similar to what we've seen in Florida, which I think another state where I know there's a lot going on in terms of like the ballot initiative down there.
Right.
To drive out Democratic support, but I think they're going to maintain 2 Republican Senate seats, like it is going to probably be in Ohio. That's my bet. We'll find out.
We'll have to see on that one, but I think the swing states of the Bush and Obama era are not the swing states of the Trump, Biden, Harris era.
Into transition, a great segue.
So I try.
One of
teeing
those,
that one up
because one of the other states, the last state we want to talk about today, is Texas.
The holy grail for Democrats.
And Texas is slowly but surely, we're going to see it get to this point, I think. Now, I don't think this cycle is going to be the time, but I think we are not too far away from Texas really being in play for both sides. And we have seen that in the form of spending this cycle.
Yes, which is what makes Texas different. You and I cut our teeth working politics in Georgia.
Yes.
And there was a long time. Push that Georgia was going to become a swing state, but it did not see the spending levels that would be associated with pushing for a swing state really until 2018. The difference with Texas is if Democrats can win Texas in a presidential election, the entire current Republican coalition falls apart.
Changes the whole board.
They cannot win as the board stands now without Texas.
So because of that, I think this cycle, more than we saw in 2020, where we saw like a burgeoning amount of Democratic dollars going into the state. This year, we have seen a ton of money in the Texas Senate race. Now, I don't know if it's among the most expensive in the country. It's definitely top 5.
Sure.
And I think it's 2 parts Democrats on offense and Republicans on defense.
Sure.
For a guy like Ted Cruz is on the ballot, not the most well-liked guy in America, but he's, within his own state, he's a very highly known quantity. And he has been spending to defend that seat since May.
Well, the messaging has been fascinating to me. Here you have Ted Cruz, who is, firebrand of firebrands, talking about how he's a bipartisan
racing
coalition
to the middle.
builder, all this stuff, which I think, say what you want about Ted Cruz, he's not a dumb man. He knows where those voters are. Texas has gotten bluer.
It has.
Whether or not that changes now.
And look, there are some people that may be feeling a little bullish for Democrats' chances, saying that Colin Allred, who is a fairly competitive
candidate,
that he might have the juice to do it. We don't need to make a call on that one. I'm a little skeptical.
I don't know. I think that you have a very similar race playing out to 2018 with Beto O'Rourke, who was not able to get there.
Yeah, and people liked Beto O'Rourke too, and they equally did not like Ted Cruz back then.
Exactly, and I think that helps. We don't see this energy when Cornyn's on the ballot.
No.
It's Ted Cruz brings us out.
I think it's fair to assume that the margins between Ted Cruz's run in 2018 versus what we will see this year will be slimmer.
Yep.
I think that he's going to win, but it won't be by I don't even remember what it was back then against Beto, but it was
close. It was a couple points, I believe.
Yeah, so might be a little closer this time around. We'll find out.
That one I'll be interested to see. Texas is also redistricted to a point where they don't have those competitive houses. That was another place in 2018 where I think O'Rourke was the beneficiary of a lot of that congressional spending.
So,
it's a big episode today.
Well, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we're passionate about. We love prognosticating, and this is like this. Look, we're here.
Yep.
Election day is
almost
less than a week away. I know we're counting down the hours, but those are 5 states that I think we over and underestimated on the whole.
The last thing I want to say about Texas, and I know we're getting towards time here. The last thing I want to say about Texas is I think you and I were a little shy about rating it high because we did not have a 2022 election outlook report to the same extent we did in 2023, but our internal projections in 2022 overestimated what Texas was going to be. Right. And I think that was because we saw a competitive governor's race, what we thought would be a competitive governor's race, competitive statewide races that did not pan out. Yeah. And I think that was kind of in the back of our minds when we were working on our projections for this year. So it's possible that Texas is just a tough nut to crack when it comes to these projections.
Historically speaking, in pretty much all facets, I think people would agree. Texas is a tough nut to crack.
It's an interesting state to see.
Until then, thank you again for tuning in with us all cycle. We'll do our thank yous and all
We'll
that.
get emotional on our thank yous on Tuesday.
But until then, I'm Alan Srochi.
And I'm Tyler Goldberg. Thanks for watching Apolitical.